We bring you the latest updates from the Pna Newsroom. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations continues to recognize the historical importance of European Union as partner in trade and investment. More on this from Marita Mawahe.
During his closing remark at the 10th ASEAN-EU Business Summit, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. cited the importance of collaboration between the governments and the private sector to push for post-pandemic economic growth.
It is important that our governments continue to collaborate with the private sector, especially now that the ASEAN member states are in a post-pandemic economic recovery and are facing new challenges brought about by recent geopolitical tensions. It is noteworthy to extend our appreciation to the ASEAN-EU Business Council for its continued support and engagement with ASEAN from the sectoral bodies up to the Leaders Forum and at that level.
Moreover, Marcos emphasized the need for a free trade agreement between the ASEAN and the EU, while also prioritizing economic cooperation initiatives. To recall, the ASEAN and the EU started their negotiations on a free trade agreement in 2007, but they later opted for bilateral trade deals. He said the increased presence of ASEAN on the global stage, the entry into force of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or RCEP, the ongoing review of existing trade agreements, and the ASEAN's initiative to facilitate trade of essential goods demonstrate the region's push to maintain an open, free, and fair trade. The Philippines has been the ASEAN-EU country coordinator since 2021 until 2024.
The ASEAN-EU Joint Ministerial Statement on Connectivity 2020 was issued by the foreign ministers of ASEAN and EU, as well as a High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission at the 23rd ASEAN-EU Ministerial Meeting last December 2020. The initiative affirms the commitment between ASEAN and the EU to further boost connectivity through the implementation of key strategies, such as the EU Strategy Connecting Europe and Asia and the Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity 2025, with specific focus on the following areas: sustainable infrastructure, digital innovation, seamless logistics, regulatory excellence, and people mobility. Let us continue to strengthen trade and investment endeavors between the EU and ASEAN, with the end in view of enhancing economic integration between the two blocs.
For the Pna Newsroom, I am Marita Mawahe.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. calls on the rich nations to set up a loss and damage fund to support poorer countries. The president made the remark as he stressed the earlier agreement of nearly 200 countries at the 27th session of the Conference of the Parties, or COP27. He said the agreement to create a funding mechanism to compensate vulnerable nations from climate-related disasters has now been accepted by all parties involved. However, several questions in terms of funding remain unanswered. European Council President Charles Michel agreed with Marcos on the need to operationalize the Green Fund on Climate Change and the Damage and Loss Policy. He said the EU is ready to work with the Philippines and the ASEAN, particularly on the transfer of green technology. Marcos earlier said the Philippines is prioritizing renewable energy options such as hydropower, geothermal power, solar power, and other low-emission energy sources. In other news, the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines welcomed the latest move to decriminalize libel in the country after Senator Risa Ontiveros filed a bill on this. In a statement, NUJP President Jonathan Dos Santos said journalists have been campaigning for the decriminalization of libel for decades. He said they find libel to be incompatible with the country's principles of democracy, as people can be arrested for their reporting or their exercise of freedom of expression. He noted that they are not asking for alleged misdeeds by journalists to go unpunished, but noted that prison time is an unfair punishment for exercising freedom of expression. Ontiveros filed the bill on Tuesday, the same day that journalist Frank Simatu was convicted of cyberlibel over a 2017 Facebook post about former Agriculture Secretary Manny Piñol. Senator Raffy Tulfo also pushed for the decriminalization of libel, but only for legitimate media workers. Meanwhile, the Department of Energy, or DOE, is looking into allowing hybrid and electric vehicles to use exclusive bus and bike lanes. During the Energy Investment Forum at the Sheraton Manila on Tuesday, Energy Undersecretary Felix William Fuentabella said this is one of the incentives that the government can provide to encourage Filipinos to shift to e-vehicles. The DOE official said four-wheeled e-vehicles with green plates may use the bus lane exclusively used for the EDSA carousel. On the other hand, two-wheeled e-vehicles may use the bike lanes. Earlier, the National Economic Development Authority Board endorsed to President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. an executive order that will scrap tariff on imported, completely built-up e-vehicles with the exception for hybrid e-vehicles. And that is the latest and the biggest stories from the Pna Newsroom. For more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. We are also shown on the social media pages of the Office of the Press Secretary and on Radio Pilipinas RP1. Stay tuned for more news updates. I am William Theo. We tell stories that inspire change. Good afternoon, everyone.